In today's video, we will be discussing 5 different Kemetic symbols in tarot. Hi, my name is Sierra. I'm the host of the Tarot Alchemy podcast, and this is a place where we learn about all 78 of the archetypes in tarot through the lenses of Black and Indigenous cultural and spiritual practices. So with all of that being said, let's get started. So the first symbol we're going to look at is the Ankh, and we're going to find that in the major arcana in key 4, which is the Emperor. So what you'll notice in this card is the Emperor is seated, and in his right hand, or from our perspective on the left side, you will notice he's holding a staff that's in the shape of an ankh. So this ankh is a little different than the way that we typically see it now, with the oblong circular top and the bottom's a little bit shorter. But I find that this has an emphasis on 2 specific symbols that we can find whenever we look at the ankh itself. The top portion being that perfect circle with the horizontal rod that it is bound to by rope underneath is called a shin ring. And you'll also see this shin ring whenever you are looking at images of deities such as Heru or Nekbet, where they are holding this shin ring with their feet or with their claws in their feet. What this shin ring symbolizes is eternal symmetry and perfection. As you can see, this perfect circle, this 360 degrees in perfect symmetry, is symbolic of the divine itself and how it has no beginning, it has no end, and it stands alone perfectly as it is, its spirit in its purest form. And the long rod that is underneath symbolizes the object or things that are finite, things that we experience in time and space, like you and I, for example. So when we see the Ankh presented in this way, and specifically with the energy of the Emperor being a more masculine energy, and when I'm speaking in terms of masculine and feminine, this is not gender specific. This is not gender specific. So I'm not talking about male and female. I'm speaking in terms of masculine, in terms of an active energy, and feminine in terms of intuitive or passive energy. So when we see the 2 combined in that way, we see the Ankh as a whole, which represents our life force and the eternal perfection of combining the energies of both the divine or the infinite with the finite, or the masculine in that sense. Beautiful representation here. The second Kemetic symbol we come across in tarot is a couple of cards forward in key 7, which is the Chariot. And in that Chariot, if you look at the bottom portion of the card, if you are looking at the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, you will find that there are 2 Sphinx at the bottom of the card, one black and one white. The Sphinx is a creature that is made of 2 different energies. You'll notice that it has the body of a lion and the head of a human. So whenever we're looking at this Sphinx energy in the context of a chariot, we're talking about harmonious energies here. So we see the more instinctual or human or primal aspect of our being represented through that of the lion. And then you have the more elevated and uplifted or ascended version of that energy at its crown or in the head of the Sphinx itself. So in the overall energy of this card, we see the Chariot being driven by these energies that hold space for both the divine and of the human self, driving this chariot forward. So I think that's a beautiful representation of its energy here. We also see that Sphinx when we go forward to key 10, which is the Wheel of Fortune. At the top of the Wheel of Fortune, you will see that there is a Sphinx, and on my card, he's blue. The addition of the sword brings forth the mind and the intellect, the way that we see it throughout the sword suit and the minor arcana. So when we're looking at the Wheel of Fortune in those terms, remember this is ruled by fire and the planet Jupiter, and Jupiter representing that old man wisdom, and wisdom through things that are tangible like books or documents or old ancient texts or anything of that demeanor, anything that we have made in this human experience to serve as the container for explaining or exploring spiritual experiences and phenomena. We really place that at the forefront with the Wheel of Fortune, which means that we are taking the time to actually learn and experience spirit through the containers through which we explain it, if that makes sense. For number 3, we're staying right here on the Wheel of Fortune, and we are looking right underneath the wheel with this red mystical looking creature. Well, actually, it is another combination of energies here. You have the head of a jackal and then the body of a human. This is the Kemetic deity Anpu. Anpu is the Kemetic deity over death and funerary rites. He is also the same energy that is responsible for weighing the heart against the feather of Ma'at that determines whether or not we have experiences of eternal bliss in the afterlife or eternal oblivion. So being that he is the Kemetic deity over death, it's not necessarily an aggressive type energy. It's just a reminder that everything has its phase and its cycle. It's a reminder that everything that exists here has its time, has its phase, and just as the wheel of fortune continues to turn and go around, so does the cycles of life. And I find it very fitting that he is almost supporting this wheel and the wheel of fortune, and the fact that everything that we are learning, everything that has been documented in terms of religion or spiritual experiences and documenting things that way, it just goes to show that we can always reference back to those things to help us determine how we are to move forward. Everything has a cycle. History tends to repeat itself in its own unique way. A lot of the same themes continue to come up, and it's important that we take the time to document those things to ensure that our future generations have a little bit of a blueprint the way we have. For number 4, we are staying right here on the Wheel of Fortune, and we are looking on the left side of that wheel to the descending serpent that we see on that side. And that serpent is connected to the ancient primordial Kemetic deity and protector of Lower Egypt, Wajet. In ancient Kemetic texts, you'll find that they also believed that as divine knowledge descended from the heavens to the earth, that it had this winding pattern as it descended down from the heavens to the people or to the earth in general. So I find that this depiction of the serpent and the way that it is winding down also reflects the way that energy is transferred from the heavens or from the divine and into the human realm. And lastly, for number 5, we're going to jump ahead to key 17, which is the star. And what you'll notice in this card, on the right side in the back, there is a red ibis. And this ibis is none other than the Kemetic deity Tahuti. Tahuti is the sacred scribe, and the reason why we have such documentation and the hieroglyphs that you see throughout ancient Kemet written all over the pyramids and everywhere else, if it wasn't for Tahuti as the container that made documenting and writing important and an important part of the civilization as a whole, who's to say we would still have access to this ancient knowledge to this present day? Now, the ibis in general is a wading bird. It has those long legs that it uses to wade through murky, shallow waters to hunt for food, and they primarily eat things like red crustaceans, which also helps to give it that red color, but also different insects, including scarabs. I thought that was also interesting, considering the value of a scarab and its significations in ancient Kemet. That is quite interesting. So when we're talking about the star in terms of rebuilding and healing and restoring the land, I think it is very fitting to include Tahuti represented in this way, perched in the tree. You could even connect that to the tree of knowledge and being at the top of the tree of knowledge. Y'all, as I'm saying this, there's birds outside right now. Anyway, there's birds and there's a lot going around. But anyway, so I find it interesting that as we're talking about this and the star card being connected to rebirth and rehealing, especially after we just experienced energies like death and the devil and the tower even right before we came to this card. So when I see Tahuti presented in this way, it's a reminder that even at the worst of our times, we're never starting from zero, we're starting from experience. And a lot of that experience we've had up to this point has been documented and contained somehow, whether it be in a religion or ancient text or even in the esoterics. It's just a reminder that what we're rebuilding comes from the energy of what we've already experienced prior. We are learning what works and what doesn't, and we're taking that wisdom that we've received from it and we're building anew. And that is it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and any other Kemetic symbols that you find in tarot, and I'll see you in the next video.